In the shadows where truth and power blur, one name surfaces again and again: Mossad. Officially, it's Israel's intelligence agency. Unofficially, it's the hand that moves unseen through history. From assassinations to false flags, from stolen secrets to vanished planes, the accusations never stop. Each story is denied, buried, or erased, yet the whispers grow louder every year. What if these weren't just theories, but fragments of something real? This is the Most Evil Mossad Conspiracies, where coincidence ends and design begins. It's a quiet evening in Weehawken, New Jersey. The skyline glows gold in the fading light. On a rooftop overlooking the Hudson, 5 men set up a camera. They're laughing, joking, filming the Twin Towers across the river. It looks like an ordinary home video, until you notice the boxes of surveillance equipment in their van below. Tomorrow the world will burn, and this footage will become one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in modern history. The next morning, September 11th, 2001, the first plane hits at 8:46 a.m. People stop in the streets, stunned. Within minutes, another plane slams into the second tower. Panic erupts. But a call comes into police dispatch. A white van parked nearby, with men standing on top of it, cheering. Witnesses say they're taking pictures, celebrating. When police arrive, the men are calm, smiling. They hand over passports, all Israeli citizens. The FBI interrogates them for weeks. One of the agents later admits, it looked like an intelligence operation. The men work for a moving company called Urban Moving Systems, later revealed to be a front. The company's owner flees to Israel within days. No charges are filed. The 5 men are quietly deported home. The case disappears. But the questions don't. Who were they really? Why were they filming before the first plane hit? And why, according to some reports, did bomb-sniffing dogs react to their van? Conspiracy theorists argue these men weren't innocent bystanders. They were Mossad agents on a surveillance mission, recording something they already knew was coming. That's where the Zim shipping company enters the story. Just 1 week before 9/11, Zim, an Israeli-owned firm, suddenly breaks its lease at the World Trade Center and moves out. Their explanation: security concerns. It's a strange coincidence, one that fuels decades of speculation. In 2004, a retired intelligence officer told a European newspaper that Israel had issued multiple warnings to the US about a major terror plot involving aircraft. The warnings were allegedly ignored, but what if they weren't warnings at all? What if they were messages, carefully crafted to build deniability later? The official narrative says Mossad had nothing to do with 9/11, but the unofficial story, the one that refuses to die, points to patterns too precise to ignore. Surveillance vans, advanced knowledge, silent deportations, and political silence at the highest levels. Inside the FBI, a sealed file labeled Urban Moving Systems still exists. Sources claim it includes phone records, maps of Manhattan marked with red dots, and photographs of the towers taken hours before impact. Whatever's inside, it's classified to this day. If Mossad truly knew something, why didn't America listen? Did Washington choose denial over diplomatic fallout? Or was it a trade-off, information exchanged for silence? And then there's the van, the one witnesses say exploded on the highway later that day. Official reports deny it. Yet multiple dispatch tapes record the same words: we have a possible secondary device in a van, possible Israeli nationals. The tapes were never released in full. The 9/11 Commission didn't mention these arrests. Neither did Congress. The files remain locked. The men vanished into history. But somewhere, perhaps deep inside an intelligence archive, the truth still waits, quietly burning like the skyline they once filmed. If those 5 men really were Mossad agents, the question isn't what they saw that morning. It's what they already knew, and what they were sent to make sure the world would never find out. It's a bright November morning in Dallas, 1963. The air smells of fresh asphalt and anticipation. Crowds line Elm Street, waving flags and shouting Kennedy's name. The sun glints off the polished surface of the president's limousine as it crawls through Dealey Plaza. Somewhere in the crowd, a man in a black suit raises a camera. He adjusts his lens, waits and clicks one frame before the sound that will echo through history. The shots ring out like thunder. Chaos follows. Jacqueline Kennedy screams as her husband collapses beside her. Secret Service agents rush forward, sirens wail, and the crowd scatters in confusion. Within hours, a suspect is captured, a quiet ex-Marine named Lee Harvey Oswald. But even before the fingerprints are dry, questions begin to whisper through the corridors of power. Why did Oswald visit Mexico City weeks before, meeting men connected to both Cuban and Israeli intelligence circles? Why did he possess more money and false documents than a drifter should? The Warren Commission would later paint him as a lone gunman, but some say Oswald was never alone. He was part of a shadow play scripted long before that sunny day in Dallas. At the heart of it all lies Israel's secret, the Dimona nuclear project. In the early 1960s, Kennedy demanded inspections of the Israeli reactor, suspecting it was being used to develop nuclear weapons. He sent harsh letters to Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, warning that US support could be withdrawn. Those letters, declassified decades later, reveal an extraordinary diplomatic standoff. Kennedy wanted transparency, Israel wanted the bomb. When Kennedy died, the pressure ended overnight. His successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, reversed course, turning a blind eye to Dimona. Within 6 years, Israel was a nuclear power. For conspiracy theorists, the timeline is too neat, too convenient. They ask, who benefited most from Kennedy's death? In 1979, a former CIA analyst told a British journalist that foreign elements may have played a role in the assassination, hinting at Israeli intelligence connections through American defense contractors. It was dismissed as nonsense. But decades later, files from the US National Archives revealed that Israeli diplomats had met with key Pentagon officials just weeks before the shooting, meetings never explained in the official record. There are also the mysterious disappearances. Every time an investigator touched the Israeli angle, their research vanished, confiscated, classified, or accidentally lost. Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney who challenged the Warren report, hinted at international interference in his notes. Those pages were redacted before publication. If Oswald was indeed the perfect scapegoat, who arranged his role? Jack Ruby, the man who silenced him on live television, had connections to gunrunners, supplying weapons to Israel in the 1950s. Ruby claimed he acted out of rage, yet bank records show he received unexplained cash deposits weeks before the assassination. What about the camera? The man in the black suit who filmed the motorcade was never identified. His footage was seized by federal agents and never released. Some believe it showed not one gunman, but two. One firing from the front, one from the rear. Was Kennedy's death a warning to any leader who dared challenge Israel's ambitions? Or was it a coincidence buried beneath decades of political noise? The archives remain sealed. The witnesses are gone. But somewhere, in a classified vault labeled Foreign Intelligence Coordination, may lie the missing frame, the one that reveals who truly stood behind the gun that changed history. It's a warm summer night in Manhattan. The air hums with luxury and secrets. Inside a mansion on East 71st Street, the chandeliers glow softly while a party unfolds in slow motion. Crystal glasses clinking, laughter echoing against marble walls. Senators, scientists and billionaires mingle effortlessly. In the corner, a small red light blinks from a camera hidden behind a mirrored panel. No one notices. One man does. He's watching from upstairs. Epstein was a man with no clear origin story. He appeared from nowhere in the 1980s, a college dropout turned Wall Street prodigy, managing the fortunes of the world's elite without a single verified client list. He had private islands, planes and homes in every capital of power. But his true currency wasn't money. It was information. Information of the kind that could destroy reputations, control elections, and buy silence. When the FBI raided his Manhattan mansion in 2019, they found thousands of photographs, DVDs labeled with first names, and secret passageways connecting rooms. Officially, it was evidence of sex trafficking. Unofficially, it looked like something else, a surveillance web carefully constructed to ensnare the powerful. Some theorists claim it wasn't Epstein's web at all, but one spun by Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, using him as their puppet master. To understand the theory, you have to go back a generation to Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father. He was a British media tycoon with deep Israeli ties, accused of stealing hundreds of millions from his company's pension funds. When his body was found floating near his yacht in 1991, the investigation revealed something darker. Multiple intelligence agencies, including Mossad, had used Maxwell to smuggle technology and money for covert operations. At his funeral, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir called him a great friend of Israel. Not long after his death, Ghislaine moved to New York. There she met Epstein, a man who, like her father, seemed to have invisible protection. Together they built an empire of charm and coercion. Epstein's guests included presidents, princes and scientists. He bragged about knowing everyone who mattered. Some say he also bragged quietly about insurance. The so-called insurance came in the form of cameras hidden in bedrooms, bathrooms, and private jets. Victims later testified that Jeffrey Epstein made them lure men into compromising situations. Every encounter was recorded, every secret catalogued. To Mossad, theorists say, this would have been the ultimate tool of influence, a global honey trap operation. When Jeffrey Epstein was finally arrested, people expected the trial of the century. Instead, within weeks, he was dead. The guards fell asleep. The cameras malfunctioned. The coroner's report contradicted itself. Officially, it was suicide. Unofficially, it looked like an extraction or an execution. Was he silenced because he outlived his usefulness? Or was he removed because he knew too much about his handlers? According to some insiders, the tapes seized by the FBI didn't vanish. They were copied, encrypted, and transferred abroad. A former intelligence operative told a journalist that Israel got what it needed first. After his death, Ghislaine Maxwell disappeared. When she was finally captured, she refused to speak about the tapes or her father's connections. Her trial avoided every mention of intelligence links. It was as if the most dangerous part of the story had been surgically removed. So who holds the archive now? The one said to contain presidents, royalty, and tech titans caught on film? The FBI? Mossad? Or someone neither government dares to name? Theories abound, but facts remain buried beneath sealed files and dead witnesses. Because the truth about Jeffrey Epstein isn't about who he was, but about who he served, and whoever that was, they're still watching. It's 1972. The halls of a psychiatric hospital outside Tel Aviv are quiet except for one room. A man thrashes on a cot, screaming that voices are whispering inside his head. Behind a one-way mirror, 3 men in white coats take notes. But they're not doctors. Their badges bear no medical insignia. They report to Mossad. The patient, a Palestinian, has his name erased from the files, replaced with a number, subject 14. He was brought here after a nervous breakdown at an army base, but the truth is darker. He's part of an experiment, one that blurs the line between science and sorcery. The drugs coursing through his veins are designed not to cure him, but to reprogram him, to see if the mind can be rewritten like a code. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA had tried something similar under a project called MKUltra. Hypnosis, LSD, electroshock, sensory deprivation, all meant to create agents who could kill, forget, or confess on command. Officially, the US abandoned those experiments after public scandal. Unofficially, the methods were shared with allies. Israel was one of them. According to declassified cables, Mossad agents visited several American research facilities in the late 1960s under behavioral cooperation agreements. What they learned wasn't psychology, it was control. By 1971, secret psychiatric wings in Tel Aviv and Haifa reportedly began testing new chemical compounds and hypnosis techniques on patients labeled as security threats. Many were refugees, Palestinian detainees, or people no one would miss. Witnesses later described rooms with padded walls and flickering lights, tanks filled with saline where subjects floated for hours without sound or sensation, and injections that induced weeks of hallucinations. One nurse claimed she saw a patient speaking in 3 languages he'd never known. Another recalled a man who stopped screaming only after being told a code word whispered through an intercom. The official explanation was treatment. But some believe these subjects weren't being treated, they were being programmed. The goal to create controllable assets who could be used in covert missions, political assassinations, or false flag operations abroad. Each subject allegedly had a trigger, a word, a sound, or even a flashing light pattern that could unlock an alternate personality designed for obedience. In 1983, a classified report known as File 17 allegedly surfaced within Mossad's own archives. It detailed psychological conditioning experiments conducted under Operation Chaos, a project aiming to produce self-erasing couriers capable of carrying sensitive data in their subconscious minds. The report vanished after a single copy was printed. The whistleblower who leaked its existence was later found dead in his apartment, ruled a suicide. Were some of these early test subjects later deployed in foreign operations? Intelligence historians note that several unsolved assassinations in Europe during the 1970s involved suspects who later claimed memory blackouts and described hearing commands before acting. Each case was quietly closed for lack of evidence. By the late 1990s, Mossad had reportedly transitioned to digital and neurobiological research, studying how electromagnetic frequencies could influence behavior remotely. It was no longer about torture or drugs. It was about precision, control without contact, influence without trace. If the CIA used chemicals to open the mind, Mossad sought to own it. The human brain became their battlefield, a weapon and a target at once. And if even part of the rumors are true, the experiment never ended, because the most dangerous agent is the one who doesn't know he's an agent at all. It's 1998, deep in the Negev desert. A white laboratory hums under the sand, hidden from satellites and eyes alike. Inside, a scientist in a sealed biohazard suit lifts a vial under sterile light. A thin mist of vapor curls inside the glass. Targeted immunity, he whispers to his assistant, only affects them. The assistant doesn't ask who them is. He doesn't need to. For decades, Israel's defense establishment had poured resources into biological research, officially for vaccines and protection. Unofficially, according to conspiracy theorists, the goal was darker, a genetic weapon that could identify a target's ethnicity before killing them. The dream. A virus so precise it could distinguish friend from foe based on DNA. No bomb, no bullet, just a breath of air. The idea first surfaced in intelligence circles in the early 1970s, when Mossad agents allegedly obtained genetic data from Arab prisoners during the Yom Kippur War. Scientists from Israel's Ness Ziona Biological Institute, the nation's most secretive facility, were said to have studied DNA patterns unique to specific Middle Eastern populations. Officially, the research was for disease prevention. Unofficially, it became the seed of something unholy. By the late 1990s, the world was quietly entering the genomic age. The Human Genome Project was mapping life itself, and Israel, with its booming biotech sector, was a leader in genetic innovation. But theorists claim that within certain laboratories, a covert branch of Mossad saw opportunity, a way to weaponize that knowledge. The goal wasn't to unleash chaos, but to ensure absolute deterrence. A weapon so specific no one else could retaliate. In 1998, a British newspaper published a bombshell report claiming Israel was developing an ethno-bomb that would target Arab DNA sequences. The Israeli government denied it instantly, but the article cited unnamed intelligence sources and even referred to a classified Mossad project codenamed the Virus Code. The term soon disappeared from public record, scrubbed from archives as if it had never existed. The theory re-emerged years later after a string of mysterious deaths. Between 2001 and 2004, several microbiologists from Israel, Egypt, and the UK died under bizarre circumstances: car crashes, suicides, sudden illnesses. Many had backgrounds in genetic mapping and immunology. One had reportedly worked at Ness Ziona. None of the deaths were ever connected, at least officially. Then came the outbreaks. A strange respiratory illness in Saudi Arabia in 2012, a hemorrhagic fever in Yemen, a flu strain in Iran that killed disproportionately young men of a specific lineage. Each time, rumors spread of testing. Each time, Israel stayed silent. When questioned, Mossad sources said only that some viruses are natural, some are not. Did Israel crack the code of ethnic warfare decades before the world admitted it was possible? Scientists argue that targeted DNA weapons remain theoretical, yet CRISPR technology has already proven it can alter genes with surgical precision, and if one nation secretly achieved it first, they would never announce it. And what if pandemics are not all natural? What if some were rehearsals, data collection for the ultimate genetic weapon? Mossad has always believed control begins with intelligence. But what if in chasing security, they rewrote the code of life itself? Because if the human genome can be turned into a weapon, then every one of us is already marked. It's March 8th, 2014. The night sky above the Indian Ocean is perfectly still. Flight MH370 climbs steadily out of Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. 239 passengers settle into sleep. Then, at 1:19 a.m., the pilot radios in his final words, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Moments later, the signal vanishes. No distress call, no debris, nothing. It's as if the plane has been erased from existence. For weeks, the world searches. Fleets of ships sweep the seas. Satellites scour the clouds. But as the official search pushes south, another trail quietly emerges, one the public never hears about. US and Israeli intelligence satellites detect what they call unexplained aerial activity, moving west away from the official path, heading toward the Middle East. The coordinates align disturbingly close to one of the world's most secretive installations, the US base at Diego Garcia. Conspiracy theorists pounce. They claim MH370 didn't crash, it was hijacked. Not by terrorists, but remotely through its own computer system. Boeing 777 was one of the first aircraft fitted with a new fly-by-wire control interface capable of remote override. Officially, it was a safety feature. Unofficially, it could have been a weapon. Some say Mossad and Western intelligence were testing a cyber warfare system capable of taking over commercial jets mid-air. Then there was the cargo. The manifest listed 2.5 tons of electronic equipment from a US defense contractor and 12 engineers from a Chinese technology firm reportedly linked to both American and Israeli cybersecurity programs. None of it was ever recovered. If the flight was diverted, what were they carrying? And who wanted it badly enough to erase an entire plane? In the days after the disappearance, military sources reported that Malaysia's air defense radar tracked the aircraft doubling back across the peninsula before vanishing into the Andaman Sea. But that direction west pointed toward Israeli and Western operational zones. The pattern looked intentional, almost rehearsed. A month later, journalists discovered 2 passengers had boarded with stolen Israeli passports. Interpol traced them to identities used before by Mossad agents in Europe. Authorities dismissed it as coincidence. But to theorists it was a signature, a quiet fingerprint left behind by those who wanted to be seen only in the shadows. Then came the silence. Nations involved in the search began retracting data. Satellite records were classified. Diego Garcia's logs for that night were sealed under national security. Even Boeing's proprietary software codes, requested by investigators, were withheld. It was as if the world agreed to stop looking. If the plane truly vanished, why did 2 independent radar systems, one in India, one in Kenya, record an unknown object flying west at low altitude in the hours after MH370's disappearance? Both were dismissed as sensor errors. But what if the errors were the truth? By 2019, a few researchers proposed a darker theory, that the flight was diverted to a secret airstrip in the Negev desert, used for joint Israeli-American operations. The goal wasn't destruction, it was acquisition, to seize the passengers, the cargo, and the data they carried without a trace. Every nation involved has denied it. Yet the more denials surface, the more the mystery grows. No wreckage, no black box, no explanation, just a silence too perfect to be random. So the question remains, if Mossad and its allies could make a plane disappear from the sky, what else could they erase? History, evidence, even people? Maybe MH370 isn't gone at all. Maybe it's exactly where it was meant to be, hidden, waiting, proof that disappearance itself can be an act of power.